For joining us, Dewald Oliver, African Unity's financial data specialist, talking about seasonal spending. How do we stay financially frugal but still have fun this festive season?
Thank you for the opportunity, Sally. Yeah, I think one of the most important parts place we can begin is just setting up a realistic budget based on your previous month's worth of expenditure. And being realistic, allowing yourself some wiggle room. It is December holidays, you're going to have some fun. If your budget's too tight, you're not going to stick to it. If you're lucky enough to get a bonus or a 13th check, it's important to remember to set aside some money for the 42 weeks of January, the pain we will experience following the festive season. And pay off your short-term debts. With credit card interest rates being almost 30%, you know, it's definitely a good place to start and free up your cash flow in the future. You can also opt for home-cooked meals instead of going out to restaurants. Sometimes it's a much more personal experience, and you can get to know your friends a little bit better. You know, you can also have new traditions.
No, I agree with you, and it's like all important and to budget. Very important to budget, and it's the right thing to do. But the reality is, it's very hard to do it psychologically, especially if the narrative is, it's been a rough year, it's been a tough year, I deserve a treat. How do we change our mindsets to make those budgets, to stay frugal, to stay on budget?
Well, it is a decision you have to make. You have to actively make that decision. Be thoughtful when you spend the money. I like to have I've got a 24-hour sleep on it policy. If any impulse buys come up, I actually sleep on it first. If I still want it the next day, then I'll strongly consider it. I should have been saving for these big expenses throughout the year. Be on the lookout for bargains. With Black Friday coming up, it's very tempting to give into the impulse buys. But with South Africans spending 3 billion rand in 2018 on Black Friday, the retailers are definitely not charity cases. You know, they're definitely going to be trying to make their little bit of profit as well. But it is a psychological decision you have to make and say, look, I'm going to stick with my budget. I'm going to draw up a list. You know, you have to form these habits. It's definitely the best way to go about doing it, is just draw up a list, try and stick to it as best you can. The gifts that you're buying for your friends, try and be thoughtful about it instead of going for the more expensive gifts, which are often more valuable and much more appreciated by your friends.
You mentioned earlier that some people will be lucky enough to get a bonus, and we know that times are tight and not everyone will be getting a bonus this festive season. But for those lucky enough to be getting bonuses, how do you actually prioritize? Obviously, you have to try and chip away at some of the difficult financial problems. Do you prioritize your debt, the school fees for next year, or more the holiday spending? How do you choose the first thing to prioritize?
Look, it is relative to your personal situation. You can't have a blanket statement everybody should be putting their bonuses aside. But definitely make space for January. December is an expensive month. We all like to have fun. So set aside some expenses for January. Personally, I prefer putting money into my short-term debt with credit card expenses, the interest rate being so high. One way to go about doing it is looking at all your shopping card debt, your credit card debt. Look at which one has the highest interest rate and work it from the highest interest rate to the lowest.
That sounds like a very good plan.
Debts, the smaller amounts are actually psychologically much more rewarding than paying off the bigger debts. It seems like you're not really getting there. Paying off those, like, you know, your retail debt first, that, you know, your shopping card first, that's definitely going to be, oh, look, you know, I don't owe any money to this retailer anymore. That means I've got more money next month to put into my next bit of debt. And then eventually you're at a point where you can actually start paying off those big amounts much more easier.
I really like what you said a little earlier about making things more personal. And I think in these economic hard times where we simply don't have the cash to splash, maybe that is the mindset change that needs to come into play. That actually, by going small scale, by staying at home and cooking a special meal, that is actually more special than the big, flashy, big-ticket items.
No, definitely. We have new traditions and new things that we do at home now. We have board games at home. You learn a lot more about a person. You become connected, you know, and it's important to create those bonds over time rather than a restaurant or a bar where it can be impersonal. You know, you're just having a few drinks and there's loud music and other people around. Whereas if you are 8 to 10 friends sitting in a room together playing 30 seconds, you're having a ball of a time.
Absolutely. Such a lovely thought. Thank you very much. African Unity's financial data specialist, Dewald Oliver.